Political assassination in Minnesota, and there's so many questions. It's a completely confusing story. There's no real answers, but that's not stopping Democrats. They're blaming you and the President of the United States. We'll give you all the details that we know of. Also, did you check out the No Kings protests over the weekend? It really is a mental disorder. We're going to show you all the lunacy coming from the political left right now, but at least they're funny. Also, absolutely woke Major League Baseball team, the Los Angeles Dodgers. They tried to have a pride event, and it seemed to crash and burn. And this time, we have a courageous member of that team speaking out in his own very classy way. We're going to get to all of that and a whole lot more. We're brought to you by Birch Gold. My name is Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry. Thanks so much for watching the live stream today. Please go ahead and click that like right now. If you click the like, give us a thumbs up right now wherever you're watching. We will double our audience in mere minutes. It's amazing how that works, and you'll help with our reach of the show. Also, coming up at the end of the program in about an hour, we will go through all of your super chats. We let them accrue towards the end of the program, and then we'll go through all your super chats at the end. So if you've got any to share with us, we appreciate it, and we'll get to them all and interact directly with you at the end of the program. Now to Birch Gold. Our friends at Birch Gold want to remind you that we're just days away from what's been dubbed the Rio Reset. It may be the greatest threat to the U.S. dollar's global dominance in 8 decades. On July 6th, these BRICS nations, Russia, China, India, Iran, and many more, they're expected to unveil their plans to circumvent the U.S. dollar, possibly cratering its value. They've already been laying the groundwork as central banks have been methodically divesting from the U.S. dollar and U.S. bonds in favor of gold. Now, that's right. So how can you protect your IRA or 401k from the potential fallout from this meeting? Diversify with gold from Birch Gold Group. Historically, gold can be a safe haven in times of high uncertainty. That would be right now. Get a free info kit on tax-sheltered gold IRAs by texting the word Larry to 9898. 98. That's my name, Larry, 989898. July 6th marks a major meeting among nations that control 1/3 of the world's GDP. Arm yourself with information to diversify your retirement savings. Text Larry to the number 989898. Claim your free info kit from Birch Gold. Well, last night in the twilight hours of the evening in Minnesota, the manhunt came to an end as the suspected political assassin was apprehended by SWAT teams there in the state of Minnesota. That's the face of evil right there. That's the man who was on the run, who had murdered a state senator and her husband and attempted to murder another state senator. The incredible survival story of those two is absolutely inspiring, including the wife of that state senator who shielded her daughter with her own body. Incredible drama coming out of Minnesota. And I'll be honest with you, we can't make heads or tails out of the motive here other than the fact that this guy is a lunatic. Everything about him so far that we've learned through the research at the town hall sites, publicly held information, and tracing his background, he's a nutbag. He's crazy. There's no way to assign a direct political motive, even though there were politicians involved in this. I mean, there are some people who are saying that he's an ultra right-wing, MAGA hat-wearing, pro-life, anti-abortion dude. There's others who point out the fact that he was an appointee of the most radical left-wing Democrat governor in America, Tim Walz. Why would Tim Walz appoint a MAGA hat pro-lifer? There's a lot to unpack and unravel, and we may never know exactly the full motivation of this guy other than, as I said, he's a nutbag. Earlier this morning, Trey Gowdy joined the team at Fox to sort of talk about the indictments that are going to be coming down when this guy gets arraigned. Excuse me, the charges when this guy gets arraigned.
Suspect?
Well, the difference between first and second degree murder in Minnesota is premeditation. And Dana, you can live 50 years and not see more premeditation than you have in this case. So they're going to charge just enough to keep him in custody, no bond, and then the grand jury is definitely going to charge him with murder in the first degree. What's important is you can get life without parole. The other thing to look out for, though, is there a federal nexus? The feds still have the death penalty. Minnesota does not. I heard from a Republican lawmaker last night whose name was on his list. So it may be terrorism on both sides. This was a Republican lawmaker. He killed a Democrat, tried to kill another Democrat. I would look out for federal charges, so he could be eligible for the death penalty.
Okay, two sound bites here. First, Minnesota's Department of Public Safety.
All right. And then there was also speculation early on that he may have been motivated by left-wing political animus. He had a bunch of No Kings flyers in the back of his car. And the state senator that he murdered had just recently switched party lines to vote to defund Medicaid benefits for illegal immigrants in the state of Minnesota. Again, unclear. What we do know is he's a nutbag. This is how he dressed at the scene of the murder, with a Michael Myers Halloween latex mask and dressed in law enforcement costuming. He also disguised his car to make it look like law enforcement. By the way, sheds quite a bit of light on that stunt from Senator Alex Padilla last week at the Homeland Security press conference at the federal building in Los Angeles. Remember, he came up and sort of charged the podium and started screaming questions at Kristi Noem. Security immediately tried to get him out of the way and neutralize him. Only then did he start screaming, "I'm a senator, I'm a senator." See, here's the thing about nutbags. They pretend that they have legitimate authority to be able to put you at ease. When you're charging the podium with the Secretary of Homeland Security, and only then, after you've tried to push past federal security officials, Secret Service, and FBI, then you start screaming you're a senator. No. That ain't going to fly, pal. You go to the ground, you get handcuffed, the threat is neutralized, then we can talk about seeing your ID and figuring out who you are. But they'd be derelict in their duty if they just lifted up their hands and said, "Oh, he said he's a senator, I guess he's okay." Because look at what these guys do. Evil. Absolute evil. Now, law enforcement has released some more information about this guy, but they're keeping other information under wraps. This is apparently a hit list that this murderer alleged had in his car. And as you can see from the write-up here, 60 Democrat leaders appear on it along with abortion clinics. This is a typed version that was distributed to law enforcement, not the original copy, which of course makes everyone start speculating, why don't we see the original copy? We may eventually, maybe they're trying to keep that for evidence and keep it out of the jury's hands. Or maybe there's more evidence, or potential jurors, I should say. Maybe there's more evidence on that list that goes well beyond just the political hit list. We're also told that there's a manifesto of sorts. Police who said they've read it, and they claim that there's nothing in there that would shed more light on any motive or anything like that. Other people are saying, we don't care. We want to see the manifesto. Personally, where I'm sitting, let's let the process play out. We're only 48 hours after this thing. And if law enforcement and the district attorneys in this case don't want to release that information because it might jeopardize the prosecution, then I'm going to respect them for now. That said, a town hall columnist, Dustin Grage, who specializes in Minnesota politics, he's taken a look at this list, and it's very odd in his opinion. First, he says that Senator Carrie Jedchik is on the list, who apparently died of cancer in December. Also, even more bizarre, the whip counts for the House and Senate from the previous legislature, not the current one. So in other words, his hit list is old. It's from the prior session before the new year. We also have the past Hennepin County attorney listed, and Kelly Morrison is listed twice, former state senator and now a congresswoman. And John Hoffman, the second target from this individual on Saturday, is not on the list at all. So what is this list exactly? Sadly, we have more questions than answers. Also bizarre is the fact that this man was apparently married and yet had a roommate who has now become somewhat infamous on social media because of these bizarre impromptu press conferences while wearing his Papa John's Pizza work uniform.
No, because he was on call for work, and he'd always say, "Yeah, I need rest for work, so I'm sharp." because he was extracting eyeballs. So gotta be sharp for that.
I remember him walking out of the house, or hearing him walking out or anything.
Nope.
Is it unusual for him to go to bed at 7 p.m.? I mean, when you say...
Well, it depends on the shift, no, because he is working all kinds of hours. Didn't seem odd, no.
Did he give you any emotional message, said that he loves you, besides the text messages or something like that that seemed off?
Well, he said that he made some choices, and he said, you guys don't know anything about it, but yeah, so that's what he said. He didn't have much time to live.
Another big ask. Do you mind if I take a picture of the text message?
Nah,
You
I
can
kind
block
of,
out his number.
yeah. Well, the thing is, I kind of keep that private because I read it to people, and I don't know. I just got to get going. I have to.
Is his phone still ringing when you called?
No, it's
Go straight to voicemail?
yeah, just voicemail. I can't. He won't. He doesn't want me involved.
Yeah.
So he's not going to call me. He's not going to receive calls from me.
Can we at least see the picture?
Well, then everyone's taking pictures. I don't know why I'm so. He sent it to me and a friend, so it wasn't just me. And I don't know if my friend would think about me sharing that with everybody. I mean, I read it out loud just so you guys could get a context of what I feel when I read it.
Yeah.
And
Can you read it to us? We were in here yesterday.
yeah, I know. But I got to really get going.
Do you have a message for him in case he's watching? He watches. Do you want to send him a message?
Yeah, tell him I love him. He's still my best friend, and I hope he doesn't kill anybody else.
Like I said, bizarre on top of bizarre on top of bizarre. Love him. He's my best friend. I hope he doesn't kill anybody else. You know, usually those thoughts don't go together. Also, if you're just standing there talking to people and you're that out of breath that you're panting, it's time to put down the slice of pizza and maybe walk around the block a few times a day. As I said, there's nothing but questions. There's nothing but bizarre behavior. There's nothing but mystery surrounding this. And the only thing that seems to be the consistent fact about this murderer is that he was deranged, that he had some sort of narcissistic, egotistical, megalomaniacal pretensions of being a preacher or being internet famous or being influential in some way, whether it was through politics or religion or infamy, being a political assassin. But it's impossible to assign normative political motives to somebody like this. We normal people look at something like this and think, oh, he's got to fit into a certain category or a certain box, and he just got motivated to be violent because of the politics, whether it was right-wing or left-wing or whatever. That's an infantile way of looking at circumstances like this. It's frankly beneath the intelligence of this show and this audience, but it's not beneath the intelligence of Democrat Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut. He had seen enough. He found out that this guy was against abortion, allegedly. We still don't have any confirmation on any of that or whether it was just a pretense, but that was enough for him. Now suddenly it's not just pro-lifers, it's not just conservatives, it's MAGA, it's anybody who doesn't vote like Chris Murphy in Connecticut. He put together a manifesto of his own last night on social media. The Minnesota assassin appears to be a hate-filled right-winger. So can we stop walking on eggshells about MAGA's legitimization of political violence? Yes, Republicans have also been the target of inexcusable violence, but this isn't a both sides issue. This, by the way, coming at a time when there are still riots in the streets of Los Angeles. He posted this while police officers were being assaulted by the mob on the street, egged up by his political allies, by his political party. And he had the audacity to post this last night. For the last 5 years, MAGA has been bathed in political violence, he says. Most importantly, MAGA's celebration of January 6th and Trump's decision to pardon all the January 6th rioters, including the most violent, became a clear endorsement of violence committed in his name. You see, it's Trump's fault. Trump's responsible. This guy, we don't know who he voted for. We don't know anything. Again, Tim Walz appointed him to a state position. But Chris Murphy, he's going to be Johnny on the spot. He's going to be Leroy Jenkins just charging face first into this thing, because when you're on the left, there's no having to say you're sorry. If he got it wrong, who cares? Just move on. He'll be a member in good standing and a guest on George Stephanopoulos next weekend. That's the beauty of being a Democrat. It didn't start with January 6th. Trump regularly threatened protesters at his rallies with violence. He cozied up to brutal dictators abroad who used violence to maintain political control. There was no comparison in Democratic messaging. Really, because last I checked, Barack Obama got into politics because of a terrorist, Bill Ayers, who firebombed houses of police officers back in the 70s. Bill Clinton pardoned hardened terrorists who had been serving time for murdering people over the independence issue of Puerto Rico. And none of them have ever had anything to say about the Antifa mobs to take over downtown cities, firebomb federal buildings. And again, the violence that's going on right now as we speak can't even compare to the relative calm of January 6th that only lasted a few hours. But this is Chris Murphy, Democrat from Connecticut. We cannot discount the impact of MAGA's fetishization of guns. MAGA celebrates the tools of mass shooters and assassins, assault rifles, machine guns, silencers, high-capacity magazines. MAGA doesn't treat firearms with respect. It celebrates their killing power. Trump sends other signals supporting political violence, said he might pardon those that plotted the kidnapping of Governor Whitmer, threatened peaceful protesters in his military parade with assault. Again, Democrats don't say things, not both sides. That was Chris Murphy last night. Noteworthy, of course, is Chris Murphy 2 months ago, after a man shot dead the CEO of United Healthcare on the streets of New York. A clear act of assassination, cold-blooded murder, and political violence, because he claimed that his motive had to do with the rising cost of healthcare. And if you believe Chris Murphy and his party's allegations that the health insurance companies are responsible for the deaths of thousands of people, because that's the rhetoric he and his pals use, well, then if you can save thousands of people, of course, you should murder in cold blood the CEO of one of those insurance companies. That's the violence that his kind of rhetoric inspired. And I'm sure Chris Murphy at the time condemned that assassination in the same way he just did it on his thread last night on X.
Listen, I think that political leaders in this country need to be part of this conversation that's happening all over the country in the wake of the shooting of the United Healthcare CEO. I know that it's fraught, I know that it's uncomfortable, but this is really important. Listen, I'm never going to condone violence. I don't here. I spent my entire life fighting gun violence because I know that the devastation is enormous that it leaves behind. What I see happening in this country, though, is a real visceral anger that the outrage at Brian Thompson's death or the outrage at the death of any powerful person isn't matched by the anger over the thousands of people who die, often anonymous deaths, every single day in this country.
So last night, he put together a long thread on X to expose the fact that MAGA is responsible for political violence in this country, pointing to Donald Trump and anyone who supports or voted for Donald Trump in the last presidential election. And Chris Murphy goes out there and condemns it unequivocally. And yet, when Luigi Mangione murders in cold blood the CEO of a health insurance company, that same Chris Murphy is saying, hey guys, he's got a point. We should really have a conversation about what the murderer wanted us all to have a conversation about. I mean, when I put it that way, it sounds like Chris Murphy agrees with the murderer and frankly is empowering his message, almost like encouraging the next political assassination so that we can have a national conversation. This guy's an awful human being and probably going to be a leading candidate for president for the Democrats. Take note of that. He's not alone, though. The Democrats were all out after Chris Murphy's indication last night that it's okay to blame Trump and Republicans for the violence in Minnesota. Here's Adam Smith.
I want to ask you about what has happened in Minnesota. You have a lawmaker and her husband assassinated. You have another lawmaker, a state senator, who was shot along with his wife. What are your great concerns after seeing what happened and hearing from police that this was likely a politically motivated attack?
My biggest concern is that we as a society are normalizing political violence. And you see this on many points on the political spectrum. The denigration and attacking of elected officials that you disagree with. It becomes incredibly, it's hateful and dehumanizing. And it puts in people's minds the idea that violence is an acceptable way to carry out your political viewpoints. And you see this in much of the dialogue that we have. No one side of the political spectrum has a monopoly on it. It's certainly, you've seen it on the right and the left. But President Trump is the biggest problem here. I mean, he has used hateful, degrading rhetoric from the day he decided to run for president. And then pardoning all of the January 6th attackers at the U.S. Capitol, people who thought that violence was a legitimate way to overturn an election. And Donald Trump gave him a big stamp of approval. You also heard Trump muttering about possibly pardoning the people who attempted to kidnap the governor of Michigan. Look, if Donald Trump and the Republican Party want this kind of thing to stop, they need to change their rhetoric.
You know, it's almost like either Senator Chris Murphy wrote the talking points for Congressman Smith and any other Democrat who was sticking his head out and spouting off of this crap today, or they're just all reading from the same talking points. But clearly they all have the same message. You know, first frame it in, oh, yeah, this is terrible. We can't normalize political rhetoric, but Trump's the worst of them all. Just look at January 6th pardons. Just look at Whitmer. Just look at this. I mean, it's all the same playbook. And while saying, oh, well, you know, it's not just one side versus the other. And then they use all of their time and all their political rhetoric to actually point to one side of the political equation. It's disingenuous at best, and they're lying sacks of at worst. The worst, though, may have been this one on CNN today.
There was a state representative, Democratic leader of the state legislature in Minnesota, killed over the weekend, a state senator shot. How would you describe the current political atmosphere in this country this morning?
I feel like Trump has really popped the lid off the rhetoric and the sense of hate and violence and promoted this type of an environment. It's profoundly disturbing for all of us. We have seen increased threats across the country. You're probably familiar with the pizza threats. We've seen more of that where pizzas or other food is delivered to people's families that they haven't ordered. Just to say from the right wing, we know who you are, we know where you live. I can tell you all of our families feel a greatly heightened sense. And just let me just say, my heart goes out to the families in Minnesota. How horrific for the whole country, but in particularly we're holding the folks in Minnesota in our hearts.
Yeah, no place in this country for political violence of any kind.
Again, can I point out what's going on in Los Angeles right now and has been going on for the past week? That's fine. Senator Jeff Markley, the second he is asked about this, he immediately says it's Trump's fault. Trump's the problem. Trump's the devil. Yeah, it must be so sad for them that they didn't have anything to talk about this morning coming from Trump's egotistical, narcissistic, crazy, communist dictator, North Korean goose-stepping military parade, because it wasn't anything they told it was going to be. So rather than show highlights of that actually wholesome, patriotic display of celebration for our 250th birthday of the United States Army, instead, well, Trump didn't give us anything on that, so let's just make this one up and make Trump responsible for what happened in Minnesota. But what did the senator just say there about pizza deliveries? You know this. This is where people will get pizzas inexplicably delivered to their homes. And then oftentimes, moments later, they get swatted. That's what Mr. Markley, Senator Markley, was just pointing at and giving an example of how right-wing activists do that sort of thing to intimidate Democrats. Again, back to our own at townhall.com, Dustin Grage, because he took issue with the senator's characterization there. He says, hello, Senator Markley. I'm in a unique position to respond to your statement. I'm a Minnesota Republican. I've been targeted over 30 fraudulent pizza deliveries. I've lost count at this point. I was also swatted. That's attempted murder by proxy. I've spoken with dozens of conservatives across the country who've endured the same trauma. Some barely escaped with their lives. We didn't ask for this, but it happened, fueled by violent rhetoric from the left and enabled by elected Democrats. My own governor, whom you know well, routinely refers to the President of the United States as a dictator, a Nazi, and law enforcement as his modern-day Gestapo. That would be Tim Walz, the man who was dangerously close to being the vice president of the United States. This doesn't help, Grage continues. Blaming Trump, who has survived 2 assassination attempts, is not just irresponsible, it's dangerous. I haven't seen a single Republican celebrate the monster who took the lives of Melissa and Mark Hortman. He deserves to be condemned, mocked, and publicly shamed. I'll be using my platform to do exactly that. That's right, and that's what we did here too. He should be publicly shamed, he should be vilified, and he should be called the violent political nutbag that he is. Period. Full stop. None of us on the right are saying, well, he did hate abortion, so, maybe he had a point. No. None of us would say that. None of us have said that. And yet, as town hall columnist Dustin Grage points out, meanwhile, Democrats have treated violent criminals like Luigi Mangione as patron saints. He murdered another fellow Minnesotan, John Thompson, and I barely heard a peep of condemnation from elected Democrats. To make matters worse, the enhanced swatting bill passed in Minnesota doesn't even cover what happened to my family. And if the same crime is committed against someone with a different job title, it's now a felony. But for me and my family, it's still a misdemeanor. The only people who have lifted a finger to help us are from the Trump administration. So no, blaming Trump, who has condemned political violence, is shameful. I'm still waiting on a single elected Democrat to do the same for my family. Maybe consider all of that before speaking on this topic again. Well done, Dustin. I only suggest that you put that into a column and publish it at townhall.com so everyone can read it there too. Don't give it away for free, Dustin. Come on, man. Listen, there's no equivocation here on political violence. Never has been, never will be. For Democrats to suddenly jump up and down and start pointing the finger at Republicans, MAGA, or Donald Trump is a sign of utter and complete phony hypocrisy. But we shouldn't expect any more from them at this point. After all, they couldn't even bring themselves to celebrate the United States Army's birthday. That's how blinded by hatred they are for Donald Trump. They need to be better. They need to get better. I want them to get better. But as of now, I see no signs of hope. On Saturday, there was a thing called the No Kings demonstration, nationwide, funded by deep-pocketed left-wing, dark, shady groups. They had signs, they had posters, they had over 1,000 locations nationwide, and it was great because, when you're mentally disturbed, you need group therapy now and then, and that's exactly what this was. Fox News caught up with one of the protesters who fit the perfect profile of pretty much everybody who was out there. This was in Philadelphia, and take a look at this.
I'm just so scared. I'm 74 years old. I worry about everything, and I just am so scared and upset, and I don't understand why people voted for this person.
I feel terrible for this woman. That's awful. And I don't know what she's watching. I don't know what kind of media she's consuming. I don't know who is in her family to help encourage this, but it's horrible at 76 years of age to live every day of the rest of your life. And let's face it, when you're 76, you're on the back end, let's say, of the lifespan. To be that terrified and brought to tears, but unable to actually articulate one single reason why you're terrified, can only mean that you are being fed and encouraged to be hysterical without actually being able to identify what's making you hysterical. But she wasn't the only one. She's not an outlier. This is what we saw at all of these protests, from the people engaged in participating in them to the people who were speaking at them to get the crowds riled up. And if you look at her, I just said she demographically represented the entirety of these groups, because on the whole, they were all boomers over the age of 65. They were all white, and a vast majority of them were women. They've been told to be terrified. They've been told to be angry. They've been told to take to the streets. So they all held hands and they sang Peter, Paul, and Mary, If I Had a Hammer, and they were ready to bring back the good old days of the 70s protests. And it was pathetic.
We were just talking about this morning. No! Don't! Bad boy! Bad! No!
It makes me sad. I don't know whose dad or grandpa or husband that is, but guys, intervene. Have him take up golf. Have him get a better hobby, something a little bit more positive oriented and something constructive. Everything about this scene is so pathetic. You know, they set up the 5-cent Thera Trumpy stand, you know, like Lucy on the Peanuts comic strips. Of course, you don't know what I'm talking about. You're probably not in your 60s. Neither am I, but I've researched it. Yeah, that's Lucy and the Charlie Brown comic strip. 5 cents for therapy. And the therapy is to take a Donald Trump action figure and smash it against a chair. And he feels better now. I'm sorry, did they tell us that it was the MAGA Republicans who were inclined toward political violence? Is that what they said? It really is a mental disorder. In Alexandria, Virginia, in the shadow of the big 250th birthday parade for the Army, my on-air co-host, Julie Gunlock of Independent Women's Forum, she took her camera out. These are her neighbors, and she got lots of good pictures of the signs. I like my ice crushed. Get it? Ice. Crush them. This is an amazing thing about all these No Kings protests. In the midst of them, suddenly a pride parade sprouted up. There's something about all of these protests against Donald Trump that brings out all the gay. And, you know, God bless them. I'm glad they got people to march with them. You had King of Farts. That's clever. Then you've got, at least these people are under the age of 40, but they're not in the best physical shape. Impeach, convict, remove, imprison, no kings in America since 1776. As has been noted by other people observing this entire escapade, we already have a No Kings Day. It's July 4th. Thanks for reminding us. I loved Trump's response to a question on Friday about the No Kings protest. You know, does he have any reaction? And his reaction was, King, what are you talking about? I can't get anything done here without picking up the phone and talking to Johnson or Thune. And even then, we got to twist arms, can barely get votes for anything. And then a federal judge tries to stop it. I wish I were a king. I don't feel like a king. I can't get anything done here. Which is actually a very accurate and hilarious response. Then you see the faces of the opposition. Boy, they are late for bingo, aren't they? And I do like the old dude wearing the keffiyeh terrorist rag there. I effed Stephen Miller's wife and he watched. That seems healthy for a protest against Donald Trump. Free Mahmoud Khalil. Vote for a rapist, expect to get effed. And then, of course, you had the full-on black scarf wearing Antifa dude in full military gear, because that's peaceful. There's more keffiyeh scarves. I do love these guys who couldn't even muster up the energy to stand. They had to sit on a wall because, you know, the Geritol hasn't quite kicked in yet. Anti-science, Trump weakens America. What's the anti-science part? I forget now. Is it the climate thing or is it the COVID thing? Or is it the abortion thing? I do love it when pro-abortion people call those of us who love life anti-science. In that every single scientific criteria supports the pro-life position. It is a separate living entity that is human. It has its own DNA. It has its own blood type. But it's the pro-science crowd that calls it just a worthless lump of cells and not life. Hey, Congress removed the cyst from the White House, and happy Obama Appreciation Day. Wow. They're still carrying a torch for Obama. And as I said, you know, you do an anti-Trump protest, and within a minute and a half, you're going to get your pride. And I'm glad that they're proud. Even better, out in Los Angeles during their No Kings protest, we had a celebrity walking. That's right, everybody. It's Jack Black, Hollywood big shot Jack Black. Now, I think, frankly, that he just found himself amidst the No Kings protest. Seems to me that Jack is on his way to the all-you-can-eat buffet. I know this part of town in LA. There's a big buffet right there. It's an Asian buffet. You can get the crab legs and everything. But he's looking good, isn't he? Jack Black joining the crowd there in Los Angeles. Meanwhile, a celebrity in her own right, the president of the American Federation for Teachers, Randi Weingarten, she kept things sane and rational at her No Kings protest.
You are the community to this president's chaos. And together, we build a future of opportunity and justice for all. Hope over fear, aspiration over anger, the promise of America for each and every American. That is what we are fighting for today.
She's having a normal one. She's in charge of the teachers in your kid's public school room. And she wants more money and more power. Meanwhile, Jamie Raskin in the DC version of the No Kings protest, he was just completely unhinged.
No kings and we've got no slaves. We've got no masters and no serfs. Those of us who aspire and attain to public office are nothing but the servants of the people. And the moment that somebody in public office begins to act like the master of the people, that is the moment to evict, eject, reject, impeach, try, convict, and start all over again.
There you go. He wants Trump behind bars. And make no mistake, if they get the majority in the next midterm elections, that's exactly what you'll get for the next 2 years. Impeach, 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 convict, imprison. At least they're being honest about it. You should have no illusions as to what will happen if they get the majority in 2026 at the midterms. That's the man who will head your Judiciary Committee. That's the man who will begin the impeachment process because they got nothing else. Nothing at all. But that's not even the most Looney Tune thing we saw at these protests over the weekend. This is Keith Ellison. He's the Attorney General of Minnesota. Minnesota, of course, also in the news because of the horrific political assassinations that happened there. I want you to know that when Keith Ellison, the Attorney General of Minnesota, delivered these remarks, the murderer was still at hand. He had not been apprehended, and it was still unclear exactly what his political motivation was. In fact, it still is unclear. But in fact, Minnesota State Police asked people not to come to these events on Saturday for fear that more violence could erupt because some No Kings flyers were found in the back seat of this murderer's car during the manhunt. So here's Keith Ellison, the chief law enforcement officer in Minnesota, just hours after these murders, when his own state police force recommended nobody go to these events lest they foment more murder and more violence. And here's Keith Ellison.
We owe it to them. We have to do it. We must be there on behalf of the people of this country in this hour when a dictator who wants to be a king is trying to run over the rights of the people. We must be there. We must stand up. We must be strong. We cannot waver. We will not be intimidated. We are not scared of his jail. We are not scared of anything about this guy. We are not afraid, and we will not let fear rule the day. We will not let him weaponize fear against us. And I'm telling you now that he had his goons arrest a senator when he was just trying to ask a question. Senator Padilla wrongfully treated.
There you go. Perpetuating the lie that Padilla was arrested because he asked a question. Trump had him do it. Trump was there on the phone immediately the second Padilla showed up in the room. Arrest him, quick, arrest that guy before he asks a question. They're completely unhinged. And need I remind you or the Attorney General of Minnesota that it's only been 11 months since Donald Trump dodged a bullet that whisked past his skull, missing his brain by about 1.5 centimeters, drawing blood from his ear cartilage. And yet here we are, not only as if it never happened, but here we are fomenting the same kind of rage, the same kind of anger, the same kind of unhinged, violent rhetoric that leads some loser dead ender to get a gun and try to put a bullet in Donald Trump's head. It's happened a couple of times. And they won't be happy until the next one is successful. Like I said, it's unhinged behavior. It's erratic behavior. It's sociopathic behavior. And the studies confirm the fact that right now, if you're on the political left, the odds are better than not that you do suffer from some kind of mental illness. Former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich was on this morning with our own Chris DeGaulle on his great morning show, and he discussed it.
These No Kings people, we played a clip of an older woman in Philadelphia weeping to a journalist that she's scared. And I know you're a man of deep abiding faith, as am I. And I find these people to be just kind of rudderless and desperate and frightened for no good reason. Politics has become almost their cult, sort of a death cult at that, Newt.
You know, there was a very strange analysis about a week ago by a leading Democratic pollster who said that you are 3 or 4 times as likely to be depressed if you're a liberal than if you're a conservative. And he was talking about genuine clinical depression. He wasn't saying he felt bad about Trump in the White House. And I think that there's something about liberalism which seeks a danger. You know, the world's going to end on Tuesday. You know, the climate's going to destroy us. Nuclear war is going to destroy us. Trump is going to destroy us. Something has to be out there. There has to be a demon in the woods that we're all scared of. And it's at the heart of modern liberalism that somehow I have to be a totalitarian and I have to force you to say what I say. Otherwise, I'll be frightened. And so, you know, if you use, for example, these horrifying words like man and woman, I mean, clearly you are hating people, or you wouldn't use these hateful terms. Or if you suggest something radical like parents should know what happens with their children in school, you're clearly just a vicious person. And on the left, they get in a room and they believe this stuff, and so they get further and further away from most Americans.
And that has been my point. I think you share it, that what we watch is made for consumption. This stuff in the streets, the ICE stuff, the No King stuff, it's not the country. It never has been, Mr. Speaker. It's not the country, but it is made to look as though it is, and many people, I'm sorry to say, fall for it.
Yeah, well said, Chris DeGaulle. Again, our colleague on Salem News Channel. Check out his show every morning. He's looking good, too, by the way. Maybe an Ozempic situation over there. Meanwhile, we'll let Brett Baer kind of have the last word here. A great moment as he was co-anchoring from Fox News the 250th birthday parade for the United States Army, and at the same time, the No Kings protests. And he delivered a powerful message to all those who decided to take to the streets to complain about the man in the White House instead of to celebrate our United States military.
You know, we noted that these No King protests happening in many cities around the country, suggesting that this was an authoritarian display. We don't have a king in the U.S., and in part we don't because the U.S. Army 250 years ago
That's right.
made it so. So there is no king here. You know.
Yeah, well said, Brett Baer. Very well said, in fact. And I don't think I have anything to add other than happy birthday, U.S. Army. And for everyone who is out there in the No Kings protests, seek help. It's Pride Month, don't you know? It's not like you can escape it. And in Major League Baseball, they like to have their Pride Nights. Most of the teams, I think it's only the Texas Rangers who opt out of this extravaganza. But out in Los Angeles, they always take it to the nth degree. It's La La Land after all. But something different happened this year. It's almost like the players feel emboldened to speak out if they're not entirely comfortable aligning themselves and their brands and their livelihoods and their lifelong career to something that they fundamentally disagree with. Take a look at pitcher Clayton Kershaw as he was forced to don the LA Dodgers hat with the trans rainbow multicolored so-called pride coloring. He wrote with a silver pen on his baseball cap, Genesis 9:12-16. Genesis 9:12-16. Let's take a look. It's after the flood, after Noah's Ark lands at Mount Ararat, after everybody comes out and Noah and his family are ready to rebuild the human race. God makes a covenant with Noah. God said, "This is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. I have set my bow in the clouds, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth." It's a rainbow. I remember when I was a kid, every time I saw a rainbow, my parents and my priest and my catechism teachers on Sunday school would always remind us that if you see a rainbow, that's God. That's the reminder of God's covenant with us after the Noah's flood. It's a sign of God. It's a sign of God's promise to us and our covenant with God. It's frustrating to see that beautiful sign rooted in our faith to be used to represent something very different. Again, back to Genesis. When I bring clouds over the earth and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the water shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. That's what Clayton Kershaw was trying to draw attention to with his simple act of defiance. And it's pretty beautiful. You see, the LA Dodgers have a shameful history with their so-called Pride Month celebrations. You'll remember just 2 years ago when we had a very different president in the White House and a very different climate in America. 2 years ago when Bud Light was selling its soul to Dylan Mulvaney, the LA Dodgers were celebrating their Pride Month, so-called, with the Sisters of Perpetual, what do they call themselves? Mercy? Indulgence, that's right. How could I forget? Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, which is a horrific abomination. Men not just dressed as women, but dressed as nuns. Of course, highly sexualized, sinful nuns, because, of course, they were celebrated and feted by the LA Dodgers 2 years ago. It almost seems like a universe ago, doesn't it? Considering how the pendulum has swung since then. But in summer of 2023, this was the scene on the field on LA Dodgers Pride Night. But this wasn't the entirety of the scene. We actually had Savannah Hernandez grab the video that night that really captured the scene. You see, the Dodgers, facing all of that backlash, recognized that the only way they could bring these abominable drag queens out onto the field for recognition without having it be a disaster for them would be to bring them out before anyone even got to the park. I promise you, the Dodgers sell out. We're talking about 45 to 49,000 seats on a regular basis. The stadium is not that empty, ever, except the second the gates open. And that's what they did 2 years ago, because even then they recognized what a horrible mistake it was. Fast forward to this year, and at Comiskey Park, the favorite home of Pope Leo, the White Sox actually had a full mass yesterday on their field. Yes, things are starting to change here, and the conversation has shifted quite a bit, partly because of leaders like Rick Grinnell. As you know, Rick MAGA Grinnell, he's very tightly connected to Donald Trump and the Trump administration, and he sat down for an interview with Politico, long-form conversation this weekend, and the question of these Pride Parade celebrations came up. Rick Grinnell, for those of you who don't know, is openly gay. And so the issue came up, and he made some headlines with his comments. I want you to see it.
You go to a Pride Parade, and it's embarrassing, to be honest.
What
It's
about
real,
it is embarrassing?
It's real fringe, and it's too sexual. And I think that we have to start critiquing ourselves. And by the way, this is extremely popular with normal gays. The more I talk to normal gays about this,
What's a normal gay?
it's not a radical gay that says that a 6-year-old should have their boobs cut off or get hormone replacement therapy. Look, I think the reality is that we have to have normality. That's what we were fighting for in 1993. We kept saying, we're normal, we're just like you. We just love somebody that of the same sex. Now I think, and this is an extremely controversial statement, but I believe it wholeheartedly.
Rick Grinnell, controversial, shocking.
I think that we have largely achieved equality in this country for gays and lesbians. And I think that the gay left knows that. And so therefore they're coming up with new gimmicks and fringe stuff to keep the money flowing and to keep the power going within the Democratic Party. If you are within the Democratic Party as a gay person, what you've brought to the table is organizing efforts, money and votes in the past. That's all fallen apart. You see normal gays voting for Donald Trump, for Republicans. That's been happening for years. And so I think it's time for the gay and lesbian community to police itself.
There you go. The Conversation with Dasha Burns is the podcast. That is the most dangerous, existentially threatening message that the Democrat Party can receive right now, to hear that from Rick Grinnell, because he's 100% right. Let's be clear here. Most Americans, I think, in their heart, regardless of what their political opinions are, for the most part, they recognize that their neighbors live a very different life than they do, and that's fine. Just keep it to yourself and don't mess with my children. Don't mess with my life. Don't get in the way of me and my relationship with the Lord. If you want to live your lifestyle and do your thing, go ahead. And I think that was the predominant ethic in this country for decades, including the gay rights movement. I think ultimately when changes took place in our society, government-inspired changes, or people-inspired changes through our government, for the most part, Americans, when pressed, were like, yeah, all right, just, keep it to yourself and leave me alone. That's all changed. It's all changed radically, like in 8 years. We're nowhere near where we were just a decade ago on issues like this. When, by the way, Barack Obama could win the presidency back in 2008 by vowing that he wouldn't do anything with regard to same-sex marriage until his political fortunes required all of that money and all that political power from gay groups who wanted to push and push and push, and now it's become the transgender issue. But finally, the American people have said, okay, you've gone too far, and you've pushed back, and now you've got that political message from Rick Grinnell that could be the game changer in terms of a complete and total political realignment in this country. Because no longer are people afraid to speak out and said, okay, you've messed with me, you've messed with my family, you've messed with my children, you've messed with our schools, and enough is enough, and we're not going there ever again. You messed with baseball even, and we're not going to go there. And there is now a newfound courage in this country to be able to speak up and push back, because we realize that it's not good enough to just live your own life. And as long as you don't mess with me, I won't mess with you, and everything will be fine, because we can't have it that way. It appears everything needs to be jammed down our throats, and our complete and total culture from our children's kindergarten class onward needs to be morphed and warped to accommodate the fringiest of the fringe. And you don't mess with Americans when you start doing that. We mess right back. Whether the Dodgers will ever get the message or not, who knows? There was an indication, though, over the weekend, beyond just the Pride event. I don't know if you saw this, but a woman named Neza was asked to sing the national anthem, and she planned on singing it in Spanish. She posted this on her social media because the Dodgers management told her that she couldn't do it.
It's okay. We are going to do the song in English today, so I'm not sure if that wasn't trans or if that wasn't relayed.
So courageous, so brave, so amazing. Yeah, the Dodgers said, hey, you know what? Sing it in English. That's the official language. It's the official language of baseball, and it's unifying because it's the national anthem. Well, she would have none of it.
From singing the national anthem in Spanish at the Dodgers game, and it is the official Star Spangled Banner in Spanish. You can Google it. I'll just read it to you really quick, but it was officially commissioned in 1945 by the U.S. State Department as a part of President Franklin Roosevelt's Good Neighbor policy to foster a better relationship with Latin America. Because of this, I didn't think I would be met with any sort of like, no, especially because we're in LA and with everything happening. And I've sang the national anthem many times in my life, but there was today out of all days. I could not. I'm sorry. Yeah, I just could not believe when she walked in and told me no. But I just felt like I needed to do it. Para mi gente. For anyone who's been following me for a while, you know, everything I do is out of love. Like, out of love. Good energy out of love. And I'm proud of myself for doing that today, because my parents are immigrants, and they've been citizens like my whole life at this point. They got documented really early, but I just can't imagine them being ripped away from me, even at this age, like, let alone like a little kid. Like, what are we doing? Anyways, sorry. This is a whole different side of me that y'all never see, but thank you for all the sweet messages. I love you guys so much.
Yeah, you know, we really do need to set a law, if possible, against self-indulgent narcissists doing selfie videos, telling the world how proud they are of themselves. I'm kidding, of course. There shouldn't be a law. Probably. Think this through for a second. First of all, she's right. Franklin Roosevelt did, in fact, back in the day, authorize a Spanish version of the Star Spangled Banner. But did you hear, as she was reading it from the Wikipedia page, so it's got to be true, that he did that to foster good brotherhood and relations with Latin America, not the United States of America. It's to be used overseas to foster a good relationship with other countries, not at a baseball stadium in America at America's pastime, number one. Number two, you notice she's wearing the Dominican Republic as her T-shirt as she performs the Star Spangled Banner in America for an American game. E pluribus unum, go take a hike. I'm going to wear the shirt of my parents' country because that's more important. And number three, that kind of activity mirrors exactly what was going on outside the stadium about half a mile away in downtown Los Angeles, as protesters were flying foreign flags as they were brutally assaulting American federal law enforcement officers trying to enforce our laws. When she said, I had to do it today of all days, that's the problem. That's why the Dodgers said, don't do this, because the reason she wanted to do it today of all days is because of the protests on the streets of Los Angeles, as she sang for the Dodgers. You see, when you take our unifying national anthem and you use it and warp it for your own political purposes to deliver your own political message, you've become part of the problem. You've become divisive. You are using our national anthem to make a political statement. And that's why the Dodgers said, don't do it. It had nothing to do with being anti-Latino. It had nothing to do with being anti-Spanish language. It had nothing to do with being anti-you, Neza, whoever the hell you are. It had to do with the fact that at this moment, at the beginning of a baseball game, is not the time to use our national anthem as a political weapon to make a political statement that divides. We're in the business of uniting, says the LA Dodgers. And like I said, they've learned their lesson because, well, just 2 years ago, this was their idea of uniting. That didn't work out well for them at all. All right. Hasta la vista, baby. Thank you so much for watching. Let's get through your super chats. We're going to start with Rumble. $10 from Arthur Brogdon. A big $10 super chat. Thank you, Artie. I can't believe I missed a chance last Thursday after your segment on downtown LA. Forget it, Larry. It's Chinatown. Blah. Can I tell you something? That was Andrew Breitbart's favorite movie. In fact, he wrote an article once about he actually used that phrase. I think it had something to do with the Occupy movement. Anyway, great line. You're right. You could have used it. I made a Chinatown reference, and as well, you should have done that. I worked with Faye Dunaway once, by the way. I'll tell that story one time for a big fat super chat. I worked with Faye Dunaway. It was a disaster. It was on a Broadway musical. I'll tell you all about it someday. $2 also from Arthur. Kevin, I know the super chat protocol. No soup for you. Sorry, Kevin.
That's okay.
Them's the breaks. All right, let's move from Rumble onto our other platforms. Ball State alum, $10 super chat. Thank you, Jeffrey. Hey, Dems, why you no like LA hockey team? Are you picking up the? Oh, no, Kings. I get it. The LA Kings. Doink. I don't think this protest had to do with the LA hockey team. No, Blackhawks would be more like it. Thank you, Ball State alum. Good one. Angela, $2 super chat. The biggest enemy to Americans is the Democrats. Yeah, they did not show themselves very well. I'm sorry, I'm getting warm. They didn't show themselves too proudly this weekend, Angela. I'm not going to disagree with you. And Angela, $2 super chat. The only king is King Jesus. Yeah, it's so funny. This whole who thinks of Trump as a king? Who? I don't know where it's so tone deaf what they were doing this weekend, and it never works. I mean, they have to figure out how to be for something if they're going to be a legitimate political party in this country. And even when they are crystallized and formed around what they're against, they don't do it very well. It's fallen on deaf ears at this point. They've got to come up with something new. They should probably get a Larry mug. That'd help. All right, that's it for today. Oh, I'll be on Newsmax tonight. Look for us on the Right Squad. I did the Right Squad last week, but it came the same day as the military campaign between Israel and Iran, so we got bumped. I think they played it on Saturday night. It was a good episode, and we'll be back again tonight. So look for me on the Right Squad on Newsmax tonight. Thanks for all the great comments, by the way, of all you Newsmax watchers who watch the podcast. I've been seeing that. And in fact, Kevin has encouraged me to engage more in the comments section. So if y'all leave a comment down below, I will be engaging and responding over the course of the next day or two, and I'm going to make that part of my daily habit. All right. Anything else? What are we forgetting, Kevin?
I don't know. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday, and buy my latest book. It's a political thriller, and I think you're going to like it. It mirrors a lot of what we've been reading about, especially the whole thing about USAID and government funding and corruption. It's called Doge Squad, the Corruption Protocol. You'll like it. It's good. All right. Thanks for watching today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, my name's Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry.